Hey, here's the bonus episode.
Verbal laxative.
Verbal laxative. Here we go.
We're all here again.
Yeah, we're still all here. Continuing
Surprisingly.
on. Jesus Christ. This is a
That was
continuation.
heavy.
This is part 2. Alright, so yeah, we were talking about entertainment and then jumped right into what counts for entertainment for you. Infant mortality and Jesus Christ.
Like literally Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ.
Right.
Alright then.
So like last we left off, we were talking about religion. And
Yeah, you were talking about religion.
what I was saying about religion is like, religion is also a man's world too, right? Like a lot of the higher ups, they tend to be male.
You know what? You know what's actually interesting? If you ever read these histories about all these really early tribes, a lot of them, like really early, a lot of them had female gods. They worshipped female entities. Usually, it had like gods of fertility and whatnot.
Yeah, Bill Cleese was probably god of fertility.
The Japanese, their first kind of primordial god was a woman. She represented the sun. Amaterasu.
Yeah.
She represented the sun.
Wasn't that?
And
I just played a game.
The emperor of Japan, the lore for his family is supposed to be he's a direct descendant of her.
Yeah.
So a lot of earlier on civilizations, they did have a female god.
Female deity. Yeah.
When they turned to male gods, it was sometime around the age of farming. Farming, when people started to farm.
Oh, physical labor comes into
Yeah,
play.
they started to have male gods.
Interesting. Yeah.
Like the Chinese, the god of farming for China is a man. One of the creators of the world is I think there was a woman involved in there too. I think it was a guy.
Because if you think about it too,
China is one of the old religions. I mean, civilizations. They, for some reason, I want to say Chinese gods have most of the time always been men, with some exceptions of some outlying tribes that got assimilated later. Those that were more shamanistic, they had women deities that they worship.
well, like even in Roman, like Athena's like was the god of war
God of wisdom.
and war.
No.
Well,
No,
for-
she was both.
For
No,
Greek, it's like there's a bunch of male and female.
No, God of war was Mars, and Mars
Oh
was,
yeah, it was Ares
Ares.
too.
Ares. He was the god of war. Athena is the god of wisdom, and then it's like her secondary profession is sometimes, a deputy god of war, something like that. But hers was wisdom.
Right.
But remember, their main god, Zeus.
Mhm.
Zeus and his brothers, they're all guys.
They'll
well,
keep
yeah,
going
but
back
brothers,
then.
yes.
And
It's
his,
like
his
Kronos
father
and-
before then, Kronos, guy. Right? Wait, was it Kronos?
Yeah, Kronos.
Yeah,
was
it was Kronos.
Zeus's father.
Kronos
Yeah.
and- I forgot. I don't remember back then.
Wait, was it Kronos?
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
Kronos.
Kronos was his dad.
Yeah, but
Wanted to eat
my
us.
history of gods in Greek was
Fuck, I gotta see
based
it
off
again.
God of War.
But yeah, sure, yeah. Sure. Yeah, but yeah. So, old agricultural civilizations, they worship usually it's a male figure, and I want to say when it came time for warfare, those were male figures as well. I think the only exception would be like those Amazons or whatever, but I don't even know if they're like legends or not, right? But that's how it is.
But the common theme of that is physical stuff came into play. That's when males kind of dominated the
Yeah.
right.
religious.
And then like
Before that, it was kind of 50-50 because it was all like.
Well, it seemed like there was at least more females.
Well, there was more female or at least equal female representation because back when religions were all like elemental, like shamanistic, like pulling from nature, like a god of the sun,
Yeah.
a god of the trees for the wind, or a goddess of the.
It's
you know.
really it's really
It was
interesting.
50-50.
When it was like a hunter-gatherer culture, it seems like this is not nothing. None of this is really too definitive. So, I just named a couple civilizations where it was, but like the trend is not too definitive. But there is a little bit of an interesting link. When you're a hunter-gatherers, most hunter-gatherer societies, the head of whatever village might have been a woman, a shaman woman, right? It's like a very maternal leader sort of deal. You head into farming, then all of a sudden, your head of the village kind of is a guy after that or whatever, right? And then like going up till now, now that you're seeing that majority of us don't farm. We're not a farming society anymore. Women come back to prominence. There's something about like they view women in ancient times. You would worship a woman because they give birth. Basically, some cultures viewed that as something like really divine, something really like it was
creation in front of your eyes.
Yeah,
you're seeing creation happen. So,
but that kind of is out after when you're farming, when you're going to the agricultural type. Like all of a sudden, there's just no value in that. What you value is it's some kind of like fucking guy. He's a strong guy, whether it's for war. Or whether it's just for throwing lightning around. It's a fucking dude that does all that shit. So that's the way and I don't know. The religion is just one of those things where it always goes into a dark place because it's been a couple weeks now, but there was that New Zealand shooting of that mosque in New Zealand, right?
Christchurch, New
yeah.
Zealand.
I don't know if you want to talk about but during that it was on a Friday in over there in Australia. Was there any kind of like warnings or whatever getting posted to I don't know?
I don't think there was any warning.
Any mosques or community centers or anything? Because there was that in New York. Like the NYPD came out and started guarded all the bigger mosques.
After it happened. There.
After.
Right, but before that there was no warning.
But like after that happened, did you see any of that around any friends or family or whoever that goes to these places?
In here?
Yeah.
No, not that much. There was more sympathetic outpouring, like the mosques.
Definitely.
They had lots of people that dropped off flowers even at the mosques here and like cards and stuff.
It seems like depending where you were, even if it was quite far away from Australia, on that Friday or that weekend or even the Friday after, there's this big security at most mosques, and not even that, like in most places of worship, big security, big police presence.
Yeah, I'm sure it's just people being cautious, but
Oh,
overall, I've heard of a lot of places, like how Hassan mentioned that it's like a lot of people from all different religions stopping by to like just give their sympathies.
Show support.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Because the fucked up thing was this guy. It was like one of those things where he did not show up on the radar at all for people, right? Literally, this guy came out of the blue, as far as if your law enforcement was concerned, and he had, it's some of these other people. I guess you could say. Like FBI or whoever had like some sort of tabs on them, but this one was just out of the blue, right?
Well, it was out of the blue, but then the radar isn't fine-tuned for him, for these kind of people.
It just wasn't.
It's
fine-tuned
fine-tuned
for
for
a watch list or something.
Definitely not. And all right, like New Zealand itself is not really. You don't really think of something like this happening in New Zealand, right? Like you see this happen quite a bit of times in the U.S.
That's the main place you would think.
Yeah.
Of when you mention like a shooting in general.
Yeah.
So. But like New Zealand's probably one of the last places I would think of.
So okay, a lot of people after that shooting, they started blaming stuff like they blame the internet. They're saying because of the internet and how connected everybody is, and social media and all that stuff, that you get radicalized people like that guy that shot him up. Like he did a lot of internet. He shout out a bunch of internet memes too. During the shooting, he was like, subscribe to PewDiePie, blah blah blah.
He was live streaming it.
He live streamed like 15 minutes worth of that shit. I even saw it. It was fucked. But he also in his manifesto, it's like half of it was just internet memes and shit, meme related. So people after that shooting, they were saying, the internet is to blame, social media is to blame. Facebook definitely got a big hit of it. Like what do you think? What do you think? Is it something that it was because of the internet? Or is it the old argument back then when they said it was video games like Grand Theft Auto making people more violent?
Oh, definitely.
No, sorry.
Stupid.
Well, definitely the internet is more effective than Grand Theft Auto because it's able to connect people who had these small ideas, able to connect to them and find a following, right, and create a group.
Well, yeah, the ideas sent, like they get the idea from the internet, like there's a lot of violence and everything, that's a given, but it's still down to the individual itself to actually act on these things.
Right, but but if an individual finds a community that supports them, the acting gets easier, right? When you're kind of alone, you're kind of fearful, like, because you're like, oh, no one has my back. But when you find a community that supports the way you think, it's kind of like a feedback loop. You reinforce the ideas that you have in your head. You don't think of them as wrong anymore. You think you're the social warriors, right? Like they did a documentary on Netflix about flat earthers, right? And once these people who found each other who are flat earther, they feel like they're these like they're like the renegades. They're fighting for what's right. That everyone are sheep.
They have a group. They have a community.
They're the chosen ones.
Exactly, they're the chosen one, right? And that I think the documentary even asked a profound question. They were like, because he was kind of relating to the movie, was that the Truman Show, where he found out he was living in a lie and he found the way to escape. Yeah. Well, in the Truman, and the flat earther, he was saying like, well, that guy, he had nothing to lose and therefore he could just choose to escape, right? But for a lot of us, we have these lives and that's why we can't give up the fact that the Earth is round, right? That's his idea. But in the documentary, I asked like, well, aren't you the same thing? Like, aren't you the mayor of these flat earthers? Like, would you give up the idea of flat earther? And he couldn't answer that.
But would that be really because of like the internet, like that you would more likely become a flat? I mean, because mass shootings is not something that was, that is very recent. It's been going on for quite a while now, right? If you think about back then. Just like in first world, in like U.S. mass shooting history, and schools and stuff, started before the internet was kind of even a big thing.
Yeah, I mean, Columbine was much more long before internet was a
right, and it was during, I think it was during that time, or it was probably before it too, when they were thinking, oh, this has something to do. People are violent now because of video games, or even before then, people are violent now because of Tupac and gangster rap and shit like that.
Yeah, people are just always going to point their fingers at something to blame for violence. So
yeah, but this one has people. I don't know. Can you say it's more divided? Like I was talking to my wife about this, and she thinks that the internet does probably play a big role in this, a bigger role. I think it's still like, well, no, I think. Even before the internet, you had stuff like this. Individual people are just getting,
Yeah, it definitely plays a role, but I'd still say that, a lot of it comes down to individual and how they were, kind of like their morals, really. Because we're all looking at the internet. We're all seeing all these ideas put out there about shootings, violence in general, and everything. But the majority of people don't act on it.
Right, but this one also has that one aspect where it's like a white supremacist aspect of it too, right?
Yeah.
And well, actually, the Columbine shooters, they also had that fucking like the white supremacist or whatever mindset too when they shot up the school, didn't they? I think if I recall correctly, they were like saying Hail Hitler and shit before they were shooting people.
And which one, sorry?
Columbine.
Oh, I don't remember.
I don't know. I just remember they were dressed in trench coats and shit, trying to look edgy.
Yeah, and they were wearing like loose jeans and stuff so they could hide more crap.
Yeah. I don't know, but in this case, because, this guy, he's so much like just fucking internet memes and shit in his manifesto, and even during the shooting.
Well, he also mentioned like Trump and stuff, right?
Yeah, he did. He did troll a bunch of stuff. In his manifesto, he just wrote a bunch of stuff. He's like, it's mostly just anti-Muslim stuff. Like he felt himself that he was in a crusade against a group of people that he felt, like for some reason, he felt as if he was in some kind of war. And then he would say a bunch of really messed up things and stuff that really doesn't make sense either. He was like, the country that is most in line with my views is like China, right? Stuff like that he wrote in his manifesto. But definitely the internet, a lot of it is just internet memes and shit. So in this case, that part sort of like, Brian got a little bit of a point with that one.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not completely wrong. Like, given that, let's say he never had access to the internet.
Yeah.
It's most likely that he wouldn't have done this.
Actually, the thing is, like, I mean, it gives Brian a little bit of a point, but I think in this case, even if he didn't have access to the internet, if
You
he
think he
didn't do
still
that
would've?
shit, he still would have fucking done it.
Let's see. What I think is we're giving him, you're giving him the benefit of the doubt by giving this excuse of internet.
Yeah.
If this was flipped, if the perpetrator was a brown guy, no one would be talking about the internet right now.
Exactly.
They'd be like, no one would be saying, "Oh, did he learn this off the internet, or was it this?" They'd be like, he was evil to the core of his his being. He had evil pulsing in his veins.
Right.
And that's why he did it. He hates white people, and that's why he did it.
It
Whereas
is like
when it's a white guy, we start looking for all these other excuses. Well, was he because he was radicalized over the internet, or was it because he was looking at the wrong people, or looking at the wrong role models, or this or that? Like, it becomes like an innocent person who fell into the wrong crowd and did this.
Especially in those countries, in those countries, they most people, they can't really wrap their heads around why. Like, that's probably why, and then they always want to scapegoat something.
And that's why I applaud what's her name, Jacinda, for actually calling it out as terrorism.
Right. Like,
Whereas
on the first, like,
on
right
the
at
first
that-
day, first hour,
first hour.
there was
First
nothing. There was
speech.
nothing about it. There was nothing like, we'll look into this and then we'll see if he was a lone wolf or this or that. It was like, no, this is terrorism, and that's what we're calling it.
Yeah, but there was a lot of leaders that, she was the first
But
one,
then-
and she got a lot of, got a
Yeah.
lot of props for her
But our Western media here in North America, people were still walking, kind of around the bush on that. They were like, oh, a shooter or this. That's all he was targeted at. No one called him in North American media. No one really called him a terrorist.
I think
It was
some
mostly
of
like a shooter or a
right,
or
when
a
it was
gunman,
developing, but it
or
was
this.
it was swift enough that when they were reporting it during the prime time, it was like terrorist attack in
But-
New Zealand.
Really, I don't think they ever actually said it was an act of terrorism. It was just like an act of violence.
Some
or
of them
an act-
did, but you're right. Some of them just said shooter and stuff.
Yeah.
Like 49 people dead.
An active shooter, 49 people dead.
Right. But
Or
at
this-
the same time, like, America has a bunch of mass shootings that they kind of just reported that way anyways. Like, if it's a big mass shooting at whatever school, it's
Okay,
like...
sure, but what I'm saying is, if it was a Muslim guy who was perpetrating it, or a brown guy,
Yeah.
then it wouldn't be active shooter. It would be terrorist. Even while the story's developing or whatever, even if you don't have...
I think there's an interesting thing going along, and especially with CNN right now. I say CNN because I actually read this. They're actually... I know CNN is very reluctant to kind of say terrorist to a brown person if they see a story like that. I have seen that before, and they've actually gotten flack for that. Like, there would be some attacks in London where, a guy just ran over a whole bunch of people on the bridge. I do remember seeing, like, CNN was, I think it was CNN, was slow to call it a terrorist attack, and then the commentators were, like, going nuts, like, saying, like, like, just call it for what it is or whatever, like that. So I say it's definitely both. I do agree with you. Like, there is double standards a lot of times.
I think it was Fox this time with this guy. They were like, story about how he was an angelic boy who became radicalized over the internet. Like,
that was from they interviewed his old boss when he worked at, like, a gym as a personal trainer.
right, but the fact that they go to find these kind of quotes, these kind of descriptions about the person, whereas, like, there's the way you write that, the way you find these people to give these kind of stories about this person, you're giving him the benefit of the doubt. You're like saying, look,
Right off the bat, before the facts are really in.
You're like, look, you're already creating the image of it was just an innocent guy who fell in with the wrong crowd.
Yeah.
Here's the gun.
I don't think. Just, you can be rest assured that the majority of the people that were reporting it right off the bat, they did not think this was an innocent guy. And
No, but then there are some.
Like, you're just saying how they label it.
Yeah, the way you label it right at the beginning says a lot, right? You're already creating the narrative of the story by saying
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is, if it was a brown guy, there would be no such thing as, oh, he was an angelic boy growing up in blah 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 suburbs of whatever, and then he fell in with the wrong crowd. It would be like motherfucking terrorist shot a bunch of people.
There's truth to that, but it's just I don't think it's like a too much of a blanket thing, right? But either way, whatever. The guy that was a terrorist in the end, anyways, right? And in the end, I feel like the big problem would be if all of this came out and people were still reluctant to call him a terrorist. Then you got a big fucking problem, right? The reason I say like right when it happens, they're not calling shit as terrorists. I don't know, fucking like they. That's just how it is, I guess. It's either they're either quick to draw or they're slow to draw. But in the end...
But they're always quick to draw when it's a brown guy.
But in the end, if they're still calling them not terrorists when they're clearly are terrorists, yeah, that's a big fucking problem then, right? Then there's no excuse for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, either way, it's a bad thing for sure. But yeah, I mean, the title of terrorist, it seems like...
It's almost becoming like a charged, loaded... It's less. It's almost become a loaded label kind of now, right? Like,
well, it was before. It's just more commonly used now, unfortunately.
Nowadays, if you say terrorist, the general image that pops in anybody's mind.
Yeah, but you also use terrorist. That's like it's one. It has become derogatory. It's part of the derogatory lexicon now as well, right? So that
I think that's Hassan was saying is like if you're automatically labeled as a terrorist, you don't get the attempt, like people don't attempt to try to justify it, whereas for a shooter they might try to dig deeper to see like, oh, why did he do this?
Yeah, if they're like, oh, like, oh, let's look deeper into his life and see. I don't know, at the end they still called the guy the terrorist, right?
Yeah, either way it's a person doing terrible things, so
yeah.
But on the other hand, New Zealand, I'm amazed at how New Zealand came together over this.
It's a very small population.
It's a very small population, but still, the fact that pretty much man, woman, child, old, young, everybody was there to like for showing their sorrow and coming together as a community.
Yeah.
You know?
I think a big part of it though is because they are like a small community.
Yeah.
But they don't get mass shootings
at
all. So this terrible moment really just, it brings the community together.
And I'm glad it did. It could have fractured the community even more, because when a small community can go either way.
That's true.
A small community like that, they could have alienized the Muslims even more, or it could have been like what was the Australian? What's his name? Senator? Or what was it?
Oh yeah,
the guy who blamed the victims for coming.
Something Fraser or something like that.
Fraser Anning or
something.
Oh,
like that guy was a piece of shit.
Yeah.
For anybody that doesn't know, that guy right after that shit, he's a very what's that term? Alt-right, whatever. Fucking his platform is basically a very white nationalist platform in Australia,
and very much against Muslims.
And basically, he got elected he got his seat as either it was a senator or whatever, member of the House or whatever they call it in Australia. He got there kind of on a voting technicality. The guy before him somehow was voted in, but somehow lost nomination or whatever. He lost the seat, and then it was like by election mechanism he got voted in to his seat
on a technicality.
Right. Because the one before him was either ineligible or dropped out or disqualified. I forget what. But basically, this guy, right when after the shooting happened in New Zealand, he wrote basically a letter or something that's widely disseminated, and he was saying, this is a tragic day for us, but and he said he just fucking makes himself. But we can't deny that Islam is like a dangerous religion, and we can't basically it just goes right into it. Yeah, you would think no, what the fuck are you are you that dumb? Even you know that this is probably the worst time you can say something like that.
People just shaking their heads.
But he's like one of those idiots that said, "But I said it was a tragedy in the first line," so that I can write all this in the rest of the letter. He right when that happened. I'm not even sure if they even had
It wasn't even a
totals of
day
the body.
later. It wasn't even 24 hours later. It was like literally a couple of hours after the news started coming
Exactly.
out.
Yeah,
or
I don't
something.
even think. Yeah, they didn't even have all. It wasn't even done yet. That came out, and then he's basically just shitting on like just people and saying like, yeah, we have need an Australia for just white Australians only. Right there, the guy has either
Wow.
just the worst timing, or impeccable timing. No matter how you want to look at it.
Yeah, I think he's just an idiot.
Yeah. So then later on, when he was giving like a press interview, this kid with an egg just fucking slams it on his face, and that kid just it just blew up on like social media. He got super popular because like, yeah, give it to that fucking asshole, like slam an egg and do it.
Well, you
Look
took
at the guy. He got egged, and he turned around and
Yeah,
punched the kid.
Yeah.
And the kid's like 16 or 17. It's like a minor, not like even if he was like a 22, 23 year, like you could say he's an adult. He's a kid. Like he punched a kid.
Yeah, this
Decked
is
a kid.
if you're getting
I
some
saw
guy elected.
a comparison because Arnold Schwarzenegger got egged.
Yeah.
And they're comparing how their reactions were, and the interview with like Arnold after he was like commenting on it, and he was just kind of laughing it off. He's like, well, basically I'm dumbing this down, but he's like, well, I didn't like it, but I appreciate that we live in a country where he can do something like that to kind of.
I will
voice his
kill him
opinion.
later. I will crush him.
But he took it like very well. He handled it like as well as a person can.
He's
and then
nothing
the
to me.
direct opposite, where the guy just decks a kid.
And not only decks the kid, the guy's what's his name? A bunch of his wannabe followers jumped
Wrestled
on
to the ground.
like 5 or 6 of them wrestled a 17-year-old kid to
It
the
was like
ground.
Secret Service. Secret Service wrestling
In
down
cargo
to the
shorts.
gunman. Yeah. No, so that was stupid. But Australia apparently from what you can just read from people's comments or how people sometimes describe it, kind of I guess they're not liking this because this is sort of a problem over there. They did have quite a vocal group of people that were just like him, and then like, he got elected from a stupid technicality, but he still got elected. He's like a sitting senator. I think he's a senator. He's a politician for sure, of a significant enough power, and he's basically in.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of fucked. I mean, all right, like I don't even know how. I don't even know how you just go from fucking memes to shooting people, but apparently that's where we are. This is the timeline we live in. But it's I don't know. You can you can chalk it up to some sort of divisiveness, I guess. Yeah. Go into the other divisive topic that we have today.
No. Okay.
Sorry.
I don't know. He was looking right at you, so I thought you.
I guess we could talk about the European
Brexit.
Union.
Okay,
The
sure.
European Union and its
EU.
relationship
Yeah.
with Britain.
Yes,
UK.
that was the plan.
That was the plan.
That was the
Smooth
plan.
transition as
Yeah.
always.
Yeah. Wonderfully smooth. It's better than others.
No,
That's
I
all.
might have to do a little bit more editing this time.
Well, so it started in like 2016 when they had a vote for a referendum,
Yeah,
and they decided.
that's why referendums are fucking dumb. You're just getting people.
Well, the guy who was in power, his promise was to bring up that vote, right? That was his last promise that he wanted without, and then people voted, and it was funny because like
Yeah,
I think some people voted for the UK to leave the EU, not thinking that it would win. They're like,
Yeah,
"Oh."
exactly. They're just voting as a joke or whatever.
As a joke,
It's like, I
yeah.
didn't think it would happen.
Yeah.
And then you called their bluff, and they're like, well, I guess we have to do it. And then when they started doing the research on like what it takes to leave the EU,
yeah, then people were like, "Oh shit."
yeah, they're like in a gridlock because there's so many conditions that they just couldn't figure out a deal that would work.
Yeah, the overwhelming attitude in Britain was obviously the country is having problems. A lot of it was economic problems, but then there also had a sizable portion of the population was having fears from that big migrant crisis that was coming from the Middle East.
Yeah, well,
So it drove a lot of the fears and a lot of the panic, right? So then what was going through their mind was we have to protect our country, and the EU does not allow us to protect our country the way we want to. In fact, the EU kind of makes a lot of decisions for us that we should make ourselves, and then that was basically the argument that was rolling. And eventually it came to a Brexit vote, David Cameron, who was the Tory Prime Minister of the time, he just gambled really badly and said, "Hey, let's have a referendum," and basically just lost his job after that.
Let the people vote, and
Yeah.
then people voted, and then it's like, yeah, lost his job, and then Theresa May takes up the helm.
So the whole fucking problem with referendums is just you're asking people to vote about some shit that a majority of them don't know what the fuck they're voting for. They
Yeah.
And it's
They
like a
vote-
huge deal.
Yeah, it's a huge deal, and they
changes.
90%, I want to say like 80% of people base what they know off of Facebook posts and YouTube and probably fucking memes that you see on the internet, right? So then that influences like 70 to 80% of the people out there. So then they'll vote accordingly to that in a referendum, in
What
a
do you-
very public referendum.
What do you think about the second referendum if they have it?
What? Okay, well, before we get to that, now they're in the fucking bind because now it's 3 years later. They got out of fucking Brexit, right?
Well,
EU,
there's a deadline.
EU's not accepting any of their conditions.
Yeah,
basically.
that's the thing. Like the EU is like, what the fuck? You guys literally dug your own grave. You shat on yourself.
You guys wanted to leave, and now you're saying, "But can we keep this? And
so
can we keep
fucking
this? Can we
leave.
keep that?"
That's what I'm saying is basically it. It's like they were dating, and then the UK was like the girlfriend, and it's like, oh yeah, I want to fucking, you know what? I am
I want to
leaving
keep
your
the dog.
ass,
But-
but I'm not gonna give you back the keys yet. I'm gonna stay for maybe 3 more years just until I can get my.
and can you maybe pay for my, college
Yeah,
degree that
until
I'm still
then.
doing?
And I'm gonna have to use the car.
Yeah, until
And it's like, oh, but we share a mortgage, so I want part of this house.
Yeah, yeah, and then the EU is basically like, fuck off, right?
Yeah, and it's like, well, and also like I'm like bordering with this friend kind of thing. and
Yeah.
That's gonna make our relationship dicey.
Yeah.
So can we still stay friends so that I can,
Yeah.
blah blah. blah.
I don't want to be with you, but I kind of want to use all your shit and still stay in the same. Oh my god. Okay, so anyways, before any women get mad at me.
Too late for that.
Too
Alright,
late.
This is not the podcast.
That's a guy.
I guess if
UK's
you
a
listen to
guy.
the last podcast, then yeah, we're not. Yeah.
Let's just
Screw
say
it.
UK's a guide and take the heat off my back. Okay, so then now their choices are no deal, soft Brexit, hard Brexit, semi-hard Brexit.
Oh, it's a mix of hard and soft, right?
Yeah.
Or forget, or hopefully if the second referendum
Or-
goes ahead,
But that's
then
we,
they're like,
we could just call it the
let's for-
Theresa May because that's what she's trying to do.
Yeah, well, it's the middle kind of deal. Basically, they didn't realize that in order to leave the EU, they have a whole bunch of things in place with the EU already, like common market. You got the common customs. You have a bunch.
Free movement.
Yeah, freedom of movement to an extent, and then like a whole bunch of things that are all integrated with the European Union and all these other countries in Europe that are more or less associated to some degree with it, right? They didn't realize that this would cause a whole big fucking trouble because all of a sudden you're facing what could be tariffs, what could be border limitations, what could be just
Well, like for borders, it's complicated because UK has Northern Ireland, which is part of the Ireland island.
yeah. So
And, like-
Ireland, Ireland is in two like.
And you can't build a border between them because that would just cause another war, which they settled.
Yeah, that was the big fucking problem they had back then, like with the Irish, the whole like IRA and all that shit like that, and that.
and that's not something you want to open up again.
Yeah, no, yeah. One of the agreements they kind of had back then was like, okay, we'll come to a consensus on what Northern Ireland will be. So, Northern Ireland is a part of the UK. Ireland, Republic of Ireland, is its own country. But they're basically on that same, the Irish Isles or whatever it's called. They share a border. They're right there beside each other. And for a long time in the 60s, 70s, and whatnot, there was like it's like a terrorist insurgency movement in Ireland, Northern Ireland, from people that wanted to get the British out of Ireland, and also loyalist Irish that wanted to stay with Britain. And there was just a whole bunch of shit show right there, the IRA and shit. And then if you watch Sons of Anarchy, you get those guys as well, right?
Sons of Anarchy was awesome.
The real IRA, right? So yeah, but they came to an agreement in the 90s where it was like they agreed to try to be very accommodating to each other, and they were like, Northern Ireland decides what they want to do, but they're going to stay with the UK now until they don't want to, but until then, we're going to treat it as if, you guys can come from Ireland, Republic of Ireland to Northern Ireland, no problem. Treat it almost like as one country, right? The services, goods, people, they can come and go as they please. And that was the whole deal. Then Brexit comes, and the whole big fucking problem is Ireland is part of the EU. And if you're leaving the EU, all of a sudden you're erecting borders and shit on around that area.
Yeah.
Where
So
you just
now,
paved it over. You know, like it took like decades to pave over. Now you've opened it again. And probably a lot of Brexit guys that voted for Brexit didn't realize that. And a lot of people don't want that to happen again. Understandably.
they didn't realize a lot of shit. Like, what's funny is the guys who initiated Brexit, they all stepped away right after.
Yeah, like Nigel
Farage, like everything went through, and then Brexit's happening, and then they're like, okay, we're done. Like,
yeah, he's
bye-bye.
like, I'm done. Oh, it's a great day for us. I'm
set the
resigning,
bomb.
by the way.
They set the timer on the bomb, and
Yeah, a lot of people are like, wait. What do we do now? He's like,
Fuck
if
if
I
I
know.
And fuck.
Isn't Theresa May also gonna like step down or something?
Yeah,
Well,
she's
vote of
funny.
no confidence, right?
Because
She
she can't.
survived the vote of no confidence.
Oh.
People were like, the funniest analogy I heard was like the whole thing was like a Dragon Ball Z fight, because every whatever week, the closer they got to Brexit, they would have these big votes in the their House of Commons and shit, and it's basically Theresa May powering up, and then the Tories powering up, and Jeremy Corbyn and the Liberals is powering up, and nothing happens. But tune in next episode for the big fight. The next episode they just power up again, and nothing happens. And it came to the point where it was like the deadline was like about less than a week away. They're still just powering up in Parliament. Nothing.
Well, as of this recording, the deadline's tomorrow.
No, they
extended it.
Oh, they extended it. Oh,
To
okay.
April 12th.
12th.
That's like Theresa May wanted June 30th, but the president of the EU was like, no, fuck you.
Actually, wasn't it supposed to be in March or something?
Yeah, it was supposed to be end of March.
Yeah, end of
tomorrow.
March. But they were
End of
coming
March.
up.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
It was like studying on the last day of exams. They were just like fucked around for the whole time, right?
They opened the book on the last day of the
They were
exam.
pulling an all-nighter for the Brexit vote.
Been
Forget
there.
studying. They started.
Right? And they were like, holy shit, I got a lot of stuff to cover. I don't know if I can do this in one
Well, I
night.
know Tony Stark did that, right?
What did he do?
I don't know. It was from one of the Avenger movies. It's like, oh, when did you become an expert in whatever?
It was the first
It's like,
one.
oh, last
It was
night.
the first one.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, except, he's
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
He's not the shot caller in Brexit.
So
Theresa
there was-
May can't do that
Yeah,
apparently.
no, I don't think anyone.
He's
can.
this funny thing is she's like so unpopular that in order to get her vote, one of the votes through, she promised everyone that, you know what, if you vote for me, I'll resign. I was I'm so, like, you fucking all hate me so bad. Fine, here's your reward. I will fucking quit if you give me
Just
this one
agree
vote.
to this.
And then Boris Johnson was like, fuck yeah! Yeah, definitely.
What was that vote for?
It was basically just to come to a vote or something like that.
Oh.
It's not even anything definitive, but it was. Is this something like? Please let this.
It's
One of-
probably the best choice to step down from this. I mean,
It's pretty bad.
It's
it's
pretty
such
bad.
a terrible situation to be in that it's probably best just to
So-
step off.
There was
So-
sorry.
So like the situation you're facing is you kind of leave with no deal with the EU, which means like it's just a hard fucking sever of everything, right? Like,
Oh yeah, no deal.
like,
You're
cut
you're
on the
you're
next-
basically you're a
yeah.
separate country. You're
Yeah.
treated.
So on the day of whatever they're supposed to revert all this power back to Britain. That's just one swift cut. It's like an amputation. You just amputate the border agreements. You amputate the market agreements. You amputate all of that shit. Like that is the most painful one to do. But that's probably the worst case scenario too. And then you go from like soft, semi-hard to hard Brexit.
Well,
No, but that's gonna that's almost impossible
Nobody
to do.
wants that.
Nobody wants that, and even making that come to fruition, that's impossible.
Nobody
'cause
wants
there's
no deal?
Nobody wants like no deal and you cut.
Cut.
but like
because
Because the disruptions are huge, right?
if-
you crash your
it's the most
economy,
most disruptive. Yes.
shortages, like literally shortages, food shortages. In
But if you're looking at
supermarkets
the
and shit.
experts, right? The experts they look at other European countries who aren't part of the EU, but they're in Europe, right? Like for example, like Switzerland, it's landlocked by EU countries, right?
Right, but Switzerland has, it's not an EU country, but it has
Agreements.
with-
It has agreements,
it's
right.
on the outer tier of,
But if you're looking at like what are UK's conditions, they don't even fit what Switzerland has, right?
right, because
And then
yeah,
and so like and as you go down to different further away from the radius of the EU union, like other countries like the ones that kind of like border Europe, like they have relationship with them, and even that is not satisfying
Yeah.
UK.
So if it was no deal, it's like none of that. That's
It-
the farthest you can ever.
It
get.
almost seems like no deal is the only deal for UK. Like they're heading that direction. Like they're just saying no to everything. That really, to be honest, you can't make a deal.
But they're
with
not
them.
all saying no to as in they don't want a deal. They're just saying no as they don't like what's on the table right now. But none of them are saying we want to cut it off entirely. None of the people actually want that, and the politicians themselves don't want that.
Yeah, but they also
The
can't make
conservative-
up a deal.
I know, but that's just deadlock. It's not like all of them want no deal and they're gonna head for no deal. At the end, they're all gonna get desperate and they're gonna come up with something. It might be really shitty.
EU holds all the cards right now.
So-
That's all it is.
Yeah.
EU holds all the cards. So EU is saying like, look, this is what we'll give you.
Yeah,
Basically.
it is a shit show. And then right now they're in the car that's heading towards the cliff, and they're arguing in the cars. What should we jump out of the car? Should we try to steer away from the cliff?
There was also the talk of a second referendum to vote back into
Right,
the EU.
that's at the other end of the spectrum, right? So first, at the lower end of the spectrum, the one that is the most ugliest one is no deal, right? It's like amputate.
Yeah.
And then you go soft, semi-hard, and hard. So hard Brexit is kind of like almost like no deal, but you still maintain a little bit of some of the agreements.
Yeah, you're gonna be like a Switzerland, sort of,
Yeah,
with its own
Right.
like conditions.
That's what the conservatives in that country want. And then if you go to the other end, soft Brexit, soft-boiled Brexit, that's where like the Liberals, Jeremy Corbyn's party is at. They want to keep as much of the deals as possible, ish.
It's almost as if you're part of the
Yeah,
EU.
like we're
still.
not part of the EU, but we want to keep common market, some sort of version of the free border.
It's almost like we're not with the EU, but we basically do everything
Yeah.
with as
Yeah,
if
'cause
we're
those
a
guys-
EU.
Those guys didn't like it, right? So they want to try to keep some of that shit.
Yeah,
in-
it's just like an unofficial relationship.
Yeah. It's you just split just on the books, but you're still sleeping together.
Yeah.
And doing everything as a couple.
Theresa May is trying to find her. She's the semi-hard one. She's trying to compromise between all of them, but they all hate her. That's the result of trying to compromise. They're like this fucking bag. Like
Yeah. If you're gonna compromise, you're not gonna make anyone
yeah.
happy.
So she's very unpopular, and everybody hates her for it. And then the other one is, like you said, have a second referendum, basically saying, I think didn't know what the fuck we were doing for the first time. Literally saying like,
Obviously.
you
Yeah.
guys are fucking idiots, like the general public of the UK,
Sure are.
and saying, and then saying, let's just do this again. Can we do
yeah,
it a second
it's,
time?
It's the guy coming back in the relationship.
Yeah.
That one has one box.
Yeah, but the problem is that is also
Really?
that is very close to it's not as politically as suicidal as no deal, but that by itself is quite close to political suicide because you're trying to say the vote that we had before was the people. That is probably wrong. That's what you're trying to say. Like you're assuming people are dumb in that.
Yeah, and you're also undermining people's votes
But the
from the
people,
first one.
but their votes should be undermined.
But-
because
Yeah.
like how many of them afterwards said, oh, you know, I shouldn't. If I knew this was gonna happen, I wouldn't have voted for
It's still
for
a
Brexit.
political minefield because if you're an MP, you're supposed to be representative of the people, and if you're saying a referendum doesn't count, right? That is usually like it's at the end of a lot of people's careers.
Well, yeah, you're saying I don't understand my people. Basically.
Yeah, like you're saying basically, let's vote again because I didn't like what you guys,
Yeah.
my constituents, voted, right? So that's basically what they're, like, some people are saying, yeah, like fucking, we didn't know what we were voting for. It's fair to have a second vote, but the majority of people don't want to do that.
And
because
even
it's-
even if they do have a second referendum and they decide to stay with the EU, the hardcore.
well, actually, they would be vindicated if they decide to stay, but that's the gamble, right? Like if they got vindicated, then no problem. Like, yeah, we made the right call. We stayed. The people themselves admit that I totally treated it as a joke, something like that, right?
That's obvious now.
Right. But the thing is, if it's the same fucking, if you call for a vote right off the bat, people are gonna ask you to resign, or there will be a massive like discontent across people because they're saying
You don't trust us.
you don't honor a referendum, a public referendum. That's already big fucking red mark on there.
Yeah.
They lose again, everybody will lose their jobs. There's no way they're staying in. So it's a big
It's
fucking gamble.
just, and like I said earlier, the guys who initiated this, instigated this, they just stepped away.
Yeah.
Like now they're sitting on the sidelines watching this shit show happen.
Yeah, and they're just laughing about it.
What was the whole claim back then with what's his name?
Farage and them and
They were
UKIP
saying
and everything?
what was it that the Britain is sending 350 million pounds to the EU every week or something like that, and that could be used for NHS instead.
Yeah.
And that turned out to be just a big fucking lie.
Yeah. It's the fears are not born out of nothing. Remember back then, around that time, Greece was going into bankruptcy, right? Spain and Portugal were kind of looking at bankruptcy, and a lot of it was having to do with the euro, right? The single currency, the market. They have no control over their own fiscal policy because they can't issue their own currency. It's all by euro, right? Decided by the European Central Bank. So then they were looking at that. At that time, they were kind of panicking, and they were also looking at their own problems and the problems they were having, and they're saying, "I don't want to be a fucking part of that," or something like that, right? The problem is no one was too vocal enough about what would happen if you left. Like, you're not thinking about this with a clear head.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're only thinking about, oh, it'd be so great if I left. But you're not thinking about, oh, what do I lose if I fucking leave, right? No one really made that argument first. If you're going to compare the two, then obviously, well, it's very likely that, you know, staying in does give you a lot more benefits because Britain does have some special, they have some special perks that a lot of other European Union countries don't have. They can keep their own currency, the pound, right? They issue it their own. They don't have to. They're not bound by the euro. So they already had some perks, but you know, like, if they didn't have a fucking anywhere close to, like, I would say they didn't have close enough of a comparison of what are you gonna lose and what are you gonna gain, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think a majority of the people actually knew what they were getting from the EU in general.
Yeah, and that's the fucking problem. Like, you should not have referendums on stuff like this. You shouldn't, because you shoot yourself in the foot. If it goes wrong, you're fucking standing there with your dick in your hands, being like, oh shit, now what do I do, right?
And now if they're out with a no-deal Brexit, they basically have to restart the country all over again. Like, economy, everything will just...
Yeah,
What a
like
fall
they said.
from grace too.
Like they said, like, you could be looking at supermarket shortages during the time period right after a no-deal Brexit comes about, because the goods would be interrupted to such a scale where, like, you're gonna have
They
shortages.
could have like starvation and stuff.
Well, you could look at like relationship. You go through a period where you're separated, have some depression, and you grovel back, kind of thing.
But
Yeah, but it's not it's not like that kind of relationship at all. Because this is by countries. You don't have like a personal experience of joining some fucking political and economic bloc in your own fucking life.
You don't know his life.
do you think if they do go out with a no-deal Brexit, they could technically become classified as a third world country?
No, because Britain more
I
or
don't
less
think, yeah, I wouldn't think they would fall that far.
they more or less are industrialized.
Yeah,
It's
but
just that, like, their entire economy right now is plugged into this wide European economy, right?
right. But then after that, the no-deal Brexit, then they'd have to
It would look pretty rough, but it
Did-
wouldn't look like Somalia rough.
Well, I didn't mean Somalia.
I would hope not.
I didn't mean
Greatest empire
Somalia,
on
but
earth
I meant
falls down to this.
I meant like
Harry
they,
Potter gets a revision.
they would be in the fucking shitter. They'd have to be at everybody's mercy. Like
Yeah, yeah,
even
that
if
time.
they go out to renegotiate with other countries or
Yeah.
other unions,
Right.
economic unions, they would be at their mercy because they would have all the cards. They'd be like, you guys
Yes.
are desperate, and we can dictate the terms of any deal that you do
Yeah,
make with us.
those fuckers, they will be stuck with like a 2 and a 7, right? Going, trying to negotiate deals with other countries. Like, they will lose a lot of the clout that the European Union brings, because the EU as a bigger body can do some pretty big deals with, like, big countries like China and the US, right? Individually, they don't have that much clout.
No.
The UK, especially, if you think about it, if they leave the union on a no-deal Brexit and just amputate everything, all of a sudden their most high-value exports, their most high-value manufacturing, a lot of it is sourced from countries in the EU as well, right? All of a sudden you're gonna look at they're gonna have big troubles because they're not gonna be able to manufacture a lot of these things even for export. You're not gonna get most of their basic foodstuffs or just consumer goods. They're gonna take a hit right off the bat, right? And you're gonna be in no position to negotiate with anybody. In that position if you like I said, if you have your supermarkets fucking like not stocked with food or shit and there's shortages there, you're like right now Venezuela is not in a very strong negotiating position with a lot of other countries, right? So it's you're looking at for short-term pain for maybe long-term pain. That's what you're looking at. Short-term pain for even long-term pain, and there's no gain in sight yet.
Yeah, it's a fucked up situation.
But moral of the story is don't fucking do referendums. Remember Canada had a Quebec referendum?
Yeah.
Oh, where Quebec is leaving.
You know what would happen if they voted all to leave? Fucking legally nothing.
But when it goes the way you want it, where it's like, see, you guys didn't want to leave.
The biggest draw for me, I remember, is that we wouldn't have to have French on all our crap now.
Yeah, you're like, yes!
It'd be nice not to learn French.
No, and then you realize our economy fucking just tanks because it's like we just cut off
we have
our
a
leg.
huge hole in our country.
Yeah. Quebec accounts for a lot
Like,
of the
Can you
economy.
imagine like driving across to Ontario? You would have to cross 2 borders, Quebec, and then.
From where? Do you know where the fuck we are in Canada? Alright, no, like, okay, from our position in Canada, you would not.
From our
If you're going
position,
to
Ontario
you're
would
not
come
going through
first.
Quebec.
Sorry,
Ontario.
from the East Coast.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
Okay.
From
Oh, jeez. Okay. I'm glad we sorted that out. I'm glad, right here is like one of your practice things for like banter with people outside. So you say it now so you can correct yourself so you don't make that mistake when you're out there in the real world.
I'd like to remind everyone that none of us are experts in anything, so
Yeah, but still, we're
Oh, well, Brian's an expert in editing.
editing and geography apparently too. And fucking post-mortem death.
post-mortem death.
No, that is not a thing.
Post-mortem death.
Post-mortem death. The death.
Zombies, they die.
I guess that would be a post-mortem death when you kill a zombie.
That's I would see Brexit being a thing if the Europe has had a zombie invasion and you wanted to leave. You wanted to leave the common market and the border.
So, is Walking Dead a good example of what could happen to Britain after no deal Brexit?
I bet some scenes would look similar.
You're a policeman from Scotland Yard. You wake
You
up.
wake up 6 months later.
Yeah, you wake up in a London hospital. You're like, what the fuck? These people are just eating each other out on the street. There's no zombie virus. It's just like a fucking Manchester United football.
It'll be great though if it is cheaper to travel there. It'd be great to vacation.
Oh yeah, it would be a nice time to visit.
Right
The
when
UK
they're
the
Well, I
UK.
mean,
the
like
toilet.
after things have settled and their pound kind of crashes.
You want to
Yeah.
see commodity shortages? Come to Britain.
No, well, you could see the. I've always
Bring your own
wanted-
food.
I wouldn't mind. I'd take my own food,
like a
but get to see
camping trip.
the country at a much cheaper rate than regular. That's not a bad idea, actually.
Yeah.
Go ahead with it, guys. No deal Brexit. You
Yeah.
got my vote.
Yeah, and then you have cheap plane tickets to go there.
Yeah.
How long is it gonna take for someone to make a new version of London Bridge is falling down?
Well, once the bridge falls down first again, then I'm pretty
They'll
sure
probably have new songs for
If you want to be
Brexit.
edgy, well, someone should already start on that.
Oh god.
it would be like a remix by like freaking Rihanna or somebody.
I don't know. Is she
Are you
edgy
thinking
enough?
it's gonna be a rap?
Maybe.
We could just
Oh,
have
God.
it just
British
have it
rap.
mashed up.
British rap.
I can't wait for this British rap. Oh man.
Or it could be like an Irish
You know,
folk
Irish jig.
jig.
talking about this like failure of voting.
Yeah.
They did that recent vote with the EU about digital rights. The ones that
Oh, Article
Stuff.
13.
yeah,
No,
Article 13.
I think it got renamed, right?
You want to explain to the listeners what that is?
Oh, it was basically it was a hit on YouTube. Essentially, basically, it's the idea of digital rights where if any of your thing has any copyright content, then they can attack the source that supports the, I guess, hosts the data.
Yeah.
And so YouTube is basically on fire for that, right? And so this adds a huge issue for a lot of people who use digital media as a platform of income, where people who are creators and stuff.
Yeah.
And basically, essentially the people who voted for it said they didn't actually know what they were voting for, or that they voted one way but they meant the other way, kind of thing.
But wait. Like, it doesn't.
So they passed the Article 13.
Right.
But there are a lot of people who are allowed to represent who voted for the Article 13 actually said they voted wrong, that they would have wanted to vote it the other way. And
The
if they
representatives that voted for it,
Yeah.
they feel like they voted wrong.
Yeah,
the
they
ones
voted.
that are supposed to fucking, it's their job
Yes.
to vote in the European Parliament on these things, thought they voted wrong.
Yeah.
Not average fucking Joe Blow. Literal professional politicians think they voted wrong.
They stated they wanted their vote to be something
Jesus
else.
Christ, how do I get a job like that? Sounds like you don't have to know fucking
But
anything.
essentially, if you counted all the votes that they said voted wrong, would have changed the whole outcome of the article. But unfortunately, the article's gonna stay. Like, they're not gonna change it just because people are idiots.
Well, I don't know. Our European Union articles, there's some fucking legal mumbo jumbo. What's going on?
Nothing. I'm just saying our bonus has turned into a full-length episode too.
Oh yeah, shit. All right, so
To sum up,
Yeah, okay, to sum up,
we're idiots.
But-
Stay tuned for the next one.
all right. Thanks for listening to the bonus.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Again, like, comment, subscribe. If you
Yep.
have any topics you want us to talk about, maybe say
So
that in the comments or Twitter.
submit topics so we know what to talk
Yes,
about.
I'm expecting nothing.
Otherwise,
No.
it's going to be the usual crap that we do.
Like Brexit.
Garbage.
Yeah, it's stuff that makes you crap.
All right. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.